All right. So getting back to the big theme of, oh man, we're doomed. Hopefully not. But what do you think?
That's the title of this episode.
We might be doomed, but hopefully not. Yeah. Well, where do you kind of find your hope, and what do you think needs to happen next?
I mean, what do I think needs to happen next?
Sure.
Jesus, what a question. I mean, if we can I'm very I'm trying not to go backwards. I'm for a minute, I was really burned with the whole Bernie diss situation. And
I was too.
It was really hard for me to move past that. It was a really bad breakup where people are like, get over it, stop talking about it. And you're like, no, he fucked me over, dude. He totally fucked me.
I got to the point where I said on this show and on other shows, I basically made a pledge where I was like, all of my because I canvassed for Bernie and I don't regret doing it. I'm glad I did it. But I kind of said after the whole experience was over, I was like, you know what? I only have so much bandwidth for direct action. And I think from now on, at least for a while, maybe it'll change eventually, I am going to be 100% direct action for causes and strikes and stuff like that, and initiatives and alliances. And I'm going to be 0% direct action for electoral politics. I'm not saying don't do that. People need to do it. There's a lot of grassroots candidates out there I want to see do well. There's a lot of people I'm excited about, but you know what? My direct action bandwidth is not going to be spent there, because when the candidate makes a decision or shits the bed or turns their back on you, you're just stuck. That's it. Whereas if you're working on a cause, it's all about that cause. And it's beyond the person. Yeah. It's about the cause. So I'm just like, you know what? And I've been on campaigns for net neutrality that I think when you measure it overall have been successful. We got some strong state bills. I was on a banned facial recognition campaign that has been largely successful overall. You're seeing it banned in more and more cities. Meanwhile, it's like whenever I put my eggs in the electoral politics basket, I just wind up, wow, it's Joe Biden versus Donald Trump.
Right. Totally. I mean, it's funny because I was talking about this with somebody the other day. I'm like, I grew up with parents who never voted. They were like, no one's ever going to do anything for the causes we believe in. So we don't care. It's not for us. We're gonna, that's just the way I was raised. And so I was raised going to protests, like pro-Palestine protests. And I remember
your parents were already there.
Yeah. As a kid, I was sitting on my parents' shoulders as they were going to pro-PLO protests and things. I just remember as a kid being like, do we have to spend our Saturday doing this? They were like, we'll get you ice cream after, just go. So I've always been, I'm Palestinian, I'm ride or die for free Palestine. That's the way it goes. I'm super hardcore for one state solution. There's no the gloves are off. This illusion that there's going to be a separate Palestinian state is completely ridiculous. And it is what is, mucking up the forward momentum in terms of resolving this issue. And so that's my issue. And it's unfortunate when you have an issue that is vilified and completely disregarded, or, the opposite agenda of most people in the mainstream political world. I mean, for Bernie just to be like, Palestinians are real and deserve to be considered human was that's not technically what he said, but, right. In a sense, the upshot of what he said, which was like, oh my God, thank you for considering us a real human beings who are worthy of something, and it's
but that was deemed controversial.
And that was deemed controversial. That was he was
they tried to call Bernie. I think at one point they even tried to call Bernie an anti-Semite.
Right. Yeah, for sure. They were
the Jewish guy.
The old Jewish grandpa, they were like, yeah, you're an anti-Semite.
And that's so
bananas. Everybody's an anti-Semite.
And that's
ridiculous.
It's beyond ridiculous. And I know there are a lot of answers to this question, but why do you think it is so ridiculous here in the United States. I mean, it's such a ridiculous thesis where it's, well, if you criticize the right-wing Israeli government who is doing terrible things, you'll get labeled an anti-Semite. It makes zero sense on any. I mean, it's like I criticize what the American government does around the world. Am I anti-American too?
You
like
know
that makes no sense. It does work. It does work.
I mean, it's like, who's the why? What it has. It's like they've created a dialogue and like a freeze around dialogue around Palestine and Israel. And they've created a complete, like, the propaganda of what actually is happening on the ground for decades has been completely false and a false narrative of, I mean, I remember growing up and people being like, why are Palestinians attacking Israelis? And you're like, oh, a country with the top military capabilities against people with like throwing stones with a few, like, you know, 70s Kalashnikov. like, oh, this is like, and it's framed as if these people are the aggressors and the terrorists. It's funny because this week there was this big controversy with Leila Khaled, who is the first, she was a member of the Palestinian National Congress. She was a part of the PFLP in the 70s. She was the first female to hijack a plane. She hijacked several planes in the 70s. Her policy was to not hurt anyone, to literally reroute the planes for PR and for media attention, to reroute the planes to get, you know, press coverage, to say we're doing this because Palestinians are under occupation, because our country has been taken, because we are being, you know, we have the largest refugee population, we have no rights, we have no citizenship, like we have been dispossessed, and the world is considering us the aggressors. They did this campaign to do a really extreme action. And, you know, 70s is when people did things like wear a dress and hijack a plane. And she had like, you know, she was like very well dressed with like a gun in her panties and stuff. It's like a super dramatic story. I'm like, whoa, how in the world? I guess in the 70s, if you wore like a proper outfit, you could like, you know, sneak a gun in your underwear onto a plane.
I guess so. I've never tried it, but
I've never tried it either. But, you know, I actually ended up interviewing her in 2014, and she's a delightful lady. She's like I want a free Palestine and a grandchild. Like those are her aspirations. I'm like,
well, she has.
Yeah.
The goals are there. Very concise. Very.
Yeah, boom. Very clear. But so she was invited to speak by San Francisco State University for a class, and they were going to host it on Zoom. She was doing a talk this week, and I guess the Zoom got a lot of, as Zionists were protesting, a lot of people were saying this woman's considered an international terrorist, but it's like she's a free agent. She's not, you know, she's not in jail. She's a woman living in Jordan. She was freed in a prison swap, decades ago. And so there was like huge uproar to shut down, and Zoom bowed under the pressure and were like, no, we can't host this. This is against our terms of service. And so they moved to Facebook Live, and then they moved to YouTube, and each platform was like, it's against our terms of service, because they got extreme pressure from, you know, the right wing, even like from Zionists, from Israelis, from the right wing, saying this woman is a terrorist. You can't promote this kind of speech. And so it's like using jargon, using these, it's like they create this pressure and this narrative around it to prevent any voices that would present a contradictory narrative to come to the forefront. And this is what we've been dealing with for decades.
Well,
and
what
I
did
think
the university do? How did the university respond?
And, you know, this is really unfortunate. The university has not done anything. And that's what the professor and the department were like hoping the university would make a statement or come forward that, you know, these corporate these corporate entities can make a decision about what speech can be heard or can be like taught on campus. Like that I have a lot of say in especially in a time when we're reliant on that as our form of education right now. And so
that's a topic we cover a lot on this show. We talk about that a lot.
Yeah, and I think this week has been pretty wild in terms of like what's been going on regarding Palestine in the media or Palestine in like the popular culture, because Leila's talk was shut down, which was really unfortunate because she's really funny and brilliant. And then AOC was invited to do some sort of like Rabin commemoration BS, and she somehow got pitched to speak at this, and so the opposite side was like, no, we don't want you speaking at this. This man is a war criminal. And so she has decided, because of her pro-Palestine stance and her call for BDS, that she was not going to speak at this. So it's like we're living in this time where, and it was funny because I read this like headline, and I think it was Haaretz or I don't know what it was, but it was like liberal Zionists, like AOC doesn't want to be your friend. It's like she's not that into you. So it's kind of like this ongoing, like, this is a moment finally in history where a politician is unafraid, because she's, I'm sure, getting a lot of flack for she's being heavily courted by pro-Israel forces, by Zionist forces, by, to kind of like co-opt her into participating in events or things that will then kind of move her a little bit, center on the issue of Palestine. And luckily she's like listening to her folks and and being educated and doing a lot of research about things and finding out like, hey, like, okay, this is kind of against my position. I was pitched this differently. I'm not gonna succumb. So one politician, I'm hopeful that one mainstream politician.
Ilhan Omar, she has said some things.
Ilhan Omar has said some things. Of course, Rashida Tlaib has said some things. There is some movement in the Palestine discussion where it's like, baby steps are opening up, but they're still considered super radical and off their rockers by like the rest of the government. Well,
and words. I hate to be like curmudgeon-y cynic again over here, but it's I'm also at the point where it's words are just words. I have gotten to the point I do not follow politicians on Twitter. I do not like or retweet anything they say because I was so freaking tired of all these straight up condescending tweets. Like, what would you do for an extra $2,000 a month? What would you, if you had an extra $2,000 a month, what could you do with it? Think of all the things you could do with it. Well, that's what we need. And they're fighting for all these, they're quote, fighting for all these relief packages that never freaking happened. What did happen? These fake stimulus bills that were just giveaways to Wall Street and the big banks, because in reality, our government is a straight up corporate coup. That's not embellishment. That's literally what it is. So I got so sick of all these politicians, even politicians that are considered on the left, that were just tweeting these appeasing bills that they're not actually fighting for. And I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if you go into the government and you find out there's some ministry of appeasement that times out these tweets to make you entertain the fantasy that they're actually sticking up for something. And I'm just like, you know what? Every time a politician tweets, no matter where they're at on the spectrum, it doesn't matter. It should just be ratioed of people saying, well, what are you doing about this? What are you doing about this? Are you doing anything or just tweeting nice things? If you're just tweeting nice things, I'm fucking sick of it.
Yeah, we should. I mean, at this point, I'm like, if they don't come up with something, they're not going to. They don't have any interest. There's no incentive.
They have
for
no
them
interest
to come up with anything. What are they going? And what are they going to do? Just keep shoveling money at? And then what? Like, they're not changing any of the core policies. There's no like movement towards any long-term relief. Even if they gave everybody $2,000, and then what? Like, we still have no healthcare reform. We still have student debt. Right. We still have all of the same issues, race issues, social issues that we had before. So wow. I mean, yes, not to say that 2000 wouldn't go a long way for some people, but at the same time, it's like, there is no interest. I guess you asked me half an hour ago what I would do or where I was at or what I feel hopeful about. And it's like, I don't know at this point. I have a lot of conversations I do have one or two friends, very few, a couple of people who are like, let's work, you can work within the system. Like, this is what we have, work within it. Why are you always, you're always wanting to upend the system or, just pretty much tear everything down or, but it's like, does anything ever fucking get done within the system?
Not federally. I mean, if you're going to say, let's work within the system, not like you, but like the hypothetical world you or whatever,
right.
Start in your backyard. Start in your freaking backyard. That's what it means to really work within the system and to get things done within the system. You want to do that, that's fine. But start in your backyard. Don't just show up every 4 years to make a choice between, fascism or fascism light and pat yourself on the back. Start in your freaking backyard. You want to work within the system? That's how you do it. I mean, that's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a lot of high hopes for where we're going. I don't know if personally, I don't have a lot of high hopes for the next phase of this
experiment,
of this reality show. It's like, and next season on fascism coming to your back door. Yeah, I mean, I think
there's brain-eating fungi in the water in Texas.
What is that? What is that? I didn't even read it. I was like, I can't. And next, of course, Texas. Yes, I was like, there's no water in Flint. There's brain-eating. Like, no, water is now off.
We got some water issues here in California. They might privatize all of it. Wall Street's getting into the water trading game now. It's getting a little crazy.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make